Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to jump into today's explainer with you. You know, we're always on the hunt for ways to make mastering English more efficient, more natural, and most importantly, more practical for your actual daily life. And honestly, sometimes the absolute best language lessons aren't buried in some dense grammar textbook or corporate training manual. A lot of times, they're hiding right in plain sight, in the simplest, most fundamental stories we share. So today we're looking at a wonderfully simple source, a children's story called Red, Red, Red by Polly Dunbar, which was read by Daniel from the Reading Children's Books channel. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A children's book? Really? But trust me on this. The conversational structures in this text are absolute gold for adult learners. So here's a wild question for you. Can a toddler's tantrum actually teach you everyday English? Well, the answer is a resounding yes. Let's just dive right into this. The real beauty of stories written for early learners is that they strip language all the way down to its most direct, emotionally resonant, and useful core. There's literally no fluff. So, in today's explainer, we're going to break down 5 key sentences from this story. These are sentences born out of frustration, problem-solving, and resolution, and they're phrases you can borrow right this second to boost your conversational skills in the real world, whether you're at the office or just chatting with friends.
All right, section 1, let's begin the story. Just like the narrator of our story, we need to establish some rapport and set a really welcoming tone when we're about to present information. Daniel actually starts his reading with this fantastic, super welcoming hook. Get comfy and I'll begin. I just want you to listen to the warmth of that phrasing. It's not some stiff, rigid, please be seated so we may commence, right? It's an invitation. It instantly breaks down the barriers between the speaker and the listener.
So let's look closer at the phrase get comfy. Comfy is, of course, just the casual, shortened form of comfortable. When you tell someone to get comfy, you're essentially telling them, hey, relax, settle in, prepare yourself for whatever event or story is about to kick off. It's a phrase that immediately signals warmth and informal hospitality. It shows you actually care about their physical comfort before you even deliver your message. Now, how do we actually build this into your everyday life? Because this isn't just for reading bedtime stories. Imagine you're hosting a casual brainstorming session with your team at work. Instead of saying, let's start the meeting, you could just say, grab a coffee, get comfy, and we'll begin. It instantly lowers the stress level in the room. Or, when you welcome guests into your home for a dinner party, it's the perfect warm icebreaker. It's exactly what we did at the start of this very explainer.
Moving on to section 2, when things go wrong. Okay, so in our story, our little protagonist spots a biscuit jar that's just out of reach. He climbs, he stretches, reaches, jumps, and then, crash, bang, bump, he throws a massive tantrum and is, as the book puts it, seeing red, red, red. And this brings us to a really crucial moment of de-escalation. The mother tells her child, firmly but with incredible gentleness, it doesn't help to hit the floor. Take a second to appreciate the structure of that sentence. It addresses the bad behavior head-on, but it does it by pointing out how ineffective it is, rather than just snapping or issuing a harsh punishment. This brilliantly shows how this phrase operates on 2 entirely different levels. On the one hand, in the context of the toddler, hitting the floor is a very literal action. He's physically throwing himself on the ground. But on the other hand, for us adults, this perfectly maps onto a metaphorical meaning. Hitting the floor or throwing a fit represents losing your temper, letting your emotions totally hijack a situation, or simply throwing in the towel when a problem seems way too hard to solve. So the really crucial point here is mastering this phrase framework. It doesn't help to. It's an incredibly diplomatic tool for your everyday conversations. Think about it. If a colleague is visibly stressed out and complaining about a crazy impending deadline, you wouldn't just tell them, stop complaining. That's way too aggressive. Instead, you'd use this structure. I know this deadline is tight, but it doesn't help to panic. Let's look at the timeline. See? It validates their emotion while gently steering them away from unproductive reactions. All right, section 3, finding a better way. So the mother hasn't just told the child what not to do, right? She steps in to actually offer a pathway out of all that chaos. She says to her highly frustrated little one, why not count to 10 instead? This is a classic phrase, delivered with a tone that's instructional, but also deeply calming. It's a pivot. She's completely acknowledging the child is seeing red, but offering an immediate, actionable alternative to the tantrum. This specific phrase structure is honestly one of the most useful things you can learn for negotiation and teamwork.
Why not action instead? It frames a command or a piece of advice as a really gentle, helpful suggestion. You aren't forcing the person to do anything, you're inviting them to choose a better path. In an adult context, say your team is arguing over a flawed marketing plan. You can easily interject with, "We're getting a bit stuck on this one idea. Why not look at the data from last quarter instead?" It redirects all that energy beautifully without causing any offense.
Let's actually walk through the literal visual steps the mother guides the child through in the story. Step 1, start with 1. Step 2, count to 10. Step 3, breathe. In the text, the child counts 1, 2, 3, up to 10, and then they breathe. And you know what? The frustration passes. By replacing a chaotic emotion with a very logical, sequential task like counting, the mood completely transitions. Language here is actively being used to manage human psychology, which is just fascinating. Next up, Section 4. Trying to get it right.
Okay, the storm has passed, and it is finally time to eat that highly coveted biscuit. The focus has completely returned as the child takes a little nibble and a tiny bite. They begin to count the bites. Let's see if I can get this right. 1, 2, 3. Yum!
To get this right is basically to express a sincere attempt to do something correctly. It's incredibly common to use this phrase out loud, whether to yourself or to an audience, when you're resetting your focus. It signals that what you're about to do really requires concentration. Maybe because you made a mistake earlier, like our toddler did when trying to jump for the jar, or simply because accuracy is super important right now.
Now, let's contrast the child eating a biscuit with these adult, real-world contexts, because you are going to want to adopt this phrase constantly. If you're learning a new software tool at the office and someone is training you, you can say, "Okay, let's see if I can get this right." Or if you're verbally summarizing a really complex email for a client to make sure you understand their needs, you can preface it with, "Let me see if I've got this right." It shows diligence. It shows the other person you actually care about the details.
Finally, Section 5, ending on a good note.
So our story finishes with a shared biscuit and some exchanged I love yous. But before we discuss our very last phrase, I actually have a question for you. How are you going to use these phrases today? Passive listening is great and all, but active language learning is where the real magic happens. I want you to actively plan which of these phrases you can drop into an email or a conversation before your day is over. Seriously, try it.
Our final phrase comes straight from Daniel, the narrator, as he's closing out the reading. He finishes the story by saying, "Thanks for listening, see you next time." It's simple, it's warm, and it puts a perfect little bow on the whole interaction.
What makes "thanks for listening, see you next time" so incredibly powerful is that it's just the ultimate, universally accepted sign-off. It doesn't matter if you've just finished a massive quarterly presentation to the board of directors, wrapped up a casual story with some friends, or finished an explainer like this one. This phrase does two brilliant things. It expresses gratitude for the audience's time, and it optimistically sets the stage for a future interaction. It just leaves the door open.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. Language learning is hiding right there in the simplest stories. We took a story about a toddler throwing a tantrum over a biscuit, and we managed to extract 5 incredibly professional, highly practical communication frameworks that you can take straight into the boardroom, use in your home, and absolutely everywhere in between. So, I'll leave you with this question. What other tales hold the key to your next English breakthrough? Keep your eyes open, keep analyzing what you read, and remember that mastery really is everywhere. Thanks for getting comfy with me today, and I'll see you next time.